in another state, you can compare the signatures and say, of course, this is the same person signed in both places. They voted in both places. We do a fairly good job in Kansas, if you move, of making sure voter registration gets moved, and so it's hard to vote twice in Kansas, but we still have the people who accidentally vote twice, and we don't go after those for voter fraud. A lot of places, somebody might get an advanced ballot vote, and then because we have such a long advanced ballot period, they may forget on election day, oh, I don't remember if I went and voted. They'll go to the polls. The poll books will say, well, this person got an advanced ballot, so they'll get a provisional ballot. When they go to count provisional ballots, they say, no, this person actually voted with an advanced ballot, and so that provisional isn't counted. Nothing goes any farther than that. So nobody's in trouble for doing that kind of double voting because that was unintentional. But in the cases where they signed in two states, it's pretty intentional to vote in both states, and we want to catch those.
Multiple votings, county or state, multiple registries, keep your voter updated, and adequate cyber security.
There's a lot of enhancement of cybersecurity going on. There were some articles about the voter cross-check and some of the other things at the Secretary of State's office that exposed possible problems. Now, nothing ever got breached, so your voter data is currently safe, but there are some things that can be put in place to make sure that even when we're transferring data, that if somebody got a hold of it, they couldn't read it. We need to do more with encryption of data in the transfers and to make sure that all the data is safe. The cross-check program is a valuable tool that we use to make sure that people aren't registered in two places. If somebody moves out of Kansas and we get data from other states and we say, well, this person hasn't voted in Kansas in 4 years, but they look like they're also in this other state, we can inform the other state and make sure that we send out notices and take them off the rolls after the appropriate time.
How much time do I have to answer this question?
Well, the other guys got it done in 3,
So I'm until a full section of fallow ground in 3 minutes.
There you go. Sorry about that, but.
No, that's okay. I was chair of the elections committee when the SAFE Act passed, and the reason why it ended up becoming about bipartisan, by the way, my mom says I speak 80 words a minute with Gus up to 110. I apologize for that, I get that from my father. But that all being said, the reason why we passed the SAFE Act on the voter ID was not that your major elections and your even year elections, it was local elections where most of our fraud was happening, was so you'd get 10 college kids that would memorize 10 people in 10 different precincts. So in this precinct, I'm John Schmidt. Over here, I'm Thomas Abercamp. Over here, I'm Thomas Schwanker. And so you memorize 10 people. And you get there early in the morning, and you have a list of people that you know are registered to vote, but they never vote in a local election. So I go up there as a young person, yeah, I'm Thomas Hammerschmidt. And you sign the book, and you go vote. Well, except for this year, Thomas Hammerschmidt's sister-in-law is running for school board. She calls her and says, hey, Tom, I need you to come vote for me for school board. So he goes to vote. He said, you already voted at 7:30 this morning. No, I didn't. Well, you signed the book. No, I didn't. Well, who signed the book for me? I don't know. We didn't check their ID. Why not? It's against the law. So that's why it ended up becoming a bipartisan effort to get voter ID. It's worked out great because, well, for example, in Lyon County, your new system, you're going to give them your ID, they're going to barcode it, and they will print off your ballot in front of you. So you're going to be able to check that ballot. Well, wait a minute. That's not my state representative. This is my state representative. Oh, let's double check. You're right. You correct your paper ballot right there at the polling place. And then we're making sure that the person who's voting is actually the person who claims to be voting. And so a lot of the prosecution as it relates to voter fraud has gone drastically down. You heard it, it's only 13 because we've got voter ID because it's harder to commit a crime in the state of Kansas as it relates to voter fraud. So as it relates to proof of citizenship case, I think the district attorney, once you're held in contempt, I think that's a pretty good sign you're going to lose the case. But we will keep the voter ID case. But we will lose the proof of citizenship piece as it relates to federal elections only. The reason why it came into be is because they said, well, you're going to have proof of citizenship for state races, but the feds say you don't need it. So we were going to have two different types of registration. And I think the federal court's going to say, no, you can't have two types of registration, you're going to have one. At which point I think it'll go to appellate court and Supreme Court. It is creating a lot of confusion for county clerks, but at the same time, having the court system come in and tell us what our law can and cannot be is actually pretty helpful. Because sometimes it's as simple as changing a process, or sometimes it's easy to change a word in statute. But that being said, as it comes to all the lawsuits and all the process, I'm not an attorney. I did take my LSAT, but I never finished the deal. So what I would do is hand all that off to either the county attorneys, the district attorneys want some of it, and let them defend it, because I can't. So let the lawyers be lawyers.
That leads to the second question. Won't be quite as long as the first one. Pretty simple, really. Would you, if elected, restructure the Secretary of State office to root out bureaucratic and/or budget efficiencies? And do you believe it is it's as efficient as it can be as it stands today? Do I need to repeat that one? Because I stumbled through it a little bit.
It's a good question. I've already been doing that. As Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, I've made sure that if an employee retires, that we reorganize the duties, spread them out to make sure we don't have to replace that employee. You know, when I first started, I think we're at 47, 48 employees. By the time I reorganized the office, we're at 44. I think we would have been at less, but I know Secretary Kovach has brought in some people to assist with the court cases or other things like that. You know, one of the biggest challenges for leaders in a bureaucratic organization is to sit down across from someone who's been doing the same job for 30 years and tell them that it's time to change. I've had to do this. It wasn't the assistant secretary, and it wasn't Secretary Kovach. I'm telling you, you don't make a lot of friends when you tell people that it's time to change. You know, that's the way we've always done it. Within 90 days, I changed the way we did our publications process. We used a graphic designer who was already in-house, put everything into a template, and started saving $40,000 a year just off of our publications. I want to expand this by doing print on demand with a lot of our publications. We're not as efficient as we can be, but we've made some good strides. As head of IT at the office, I redid the Uniform Commercial Code system. When I rewrote this system, I made sure we eliminated financial transaction fees. All right, we were paying a private vendor $2 for every e-check that we got. Okay, by eliminating those fees, we automatically started saving $250,000 a year. So there are plenty of places to save money at the Secretary of State's office, but I'll be the first one to tell you that we're going to have to spend some too. We have a business filing system that we have to replace. I do believe we need to treat some of our employees a little bit better. I think they earn it. And some people are going to have to go. I don't think public service is a right. I think it's a privilege. And if you're not carrying your weight, if you're not putting Kansas first every single day, then you don't deserve to be there. I haven't fired anyone at the office. I've showed a lot of people the door. I had an individual who had been there for 16 years and wasn't trained on answering the phones. He left pretty soon after I arrived. You know, as a leader, you're not always going to be someone's friend. You're not going to be the most popular guy, but you know, there are those efficiencies that you need to save. And I've been doing it. I'll continue to do it as your next Secretary of State.
One of the things, if you've been listening to Secretary Kovach, as he's been touting his race for governor, is that he's managed to make some efficiencies in the office by attrition. And I'll have to look at the office, and it looks like currently it's at a good level, but there might still be some efficiencies that we can achieve in the office. And mostly, we need to look at everything that we're doing and make sure that we're doing it in the most user-friendly and modern way as possible. Everybody's accessing things online, and so as we move more and more to that, we want to make it efficient inside the office, and cut the expenses where we can. And that will be one of my jobs with the Assistant Secretary of State, to try and find those efficiencies in the office. As far as the prosecutorial, I think we will keep a prosecutor-capable attorney in the office, just so that we make sure that those prosecutions happen. The problem we have with the Attorney General or with the district attorneys doing that is they have person crimes they want to go after, and they want to make sure that anything doing with robberies or murders or whatever are taken care of long before they will go after voter fraud. We need somebody dedicated to working on the voter fraud aspects in the office, and I will make sure that happens.
The office is pretty lean right now. I don't know if it's the most efficient. When you talk to most of your county clerks, we were out in Colby, Kansas yesterday, and visited about 13 to 20 county clerks. And they're getting, it's 2 to 3 weeks for them to get a response. The election standards that were supposed to be issued last January still haven't been issued for this upcoming election. And the reason why that isn't because it's too lean, it's because it's inefficient. And the reason why is they have about 2 contact people in that office for them to get the information. And what we're campaigning on is to increase the abilities and resources for those county clerks to make sure that they can execute on a high level, so that when you get that voter result in August or in November, you trust the result. You may not like the result, but you trust it. Because this is the first time the Secretary of State's going to have to deal with Homeland Security and CIA, because foreign nations are trying to infiltrate our election system, and they're trying to do it through social media. And the purpose is our dollar is valued on full faith and credit in the U.S. dollar, and U.S. government. Well, if I don't trust my election system, I don't trust my government. I don't trust my government, it hurts the dollar, hurts our economy, and that's why how they're trying to undermine our system of government and us being a world superpower. So it's more important than ever it has been before that we support our county clerks to make sure that when you have an election, you trust the process that election clerk did, and that's a result of the Secretary of State's office supporting 105 election clerks. So that's where we're going with this. And so what we want to make sure is, yeah, it's okay to have a lean office. It's great to have an efficient office. But if the result is you don't trust your election, is it worth spending another $100,000? So what we want to do is that Jameson and Caskey are 2 people in the office that 105 election clerks have to call right now if they need help. There's 2 people dealing with 105 election clerks. So why not go ahead and split that up into 26 zones, 26 counties per region, and you hire 4 or 5 more people that they say, this is your personal person as it relates to a community. You are now a community effort deputy under the Secretary of State's office in this area, these county clerks, you are their resource. You go there, you go out to Norton County, and you visit with the county clerk there in Ellis County, and you build a relationship and answer their questions. If it's something you can't answer, then we'll go to Jameson or Caskey. And so these people not only have a relationship with a person, but they're getting the quick response they need, because this election's coming at these clerks like a freight train, and they're not getting the response they need because they're being bogged down with things like the lawsuits and other things that I think should probably go to the Attorney General, who can handle it, and that way we can just focus on all the elections. And you can get your trusted results.
All right, time to change it up a little bit in the order. I think Mr. Esau, you'll go next. And here's the question. On the last day of the 2018 general session, House Bill 2597 was processed. Election commissioners shall receive a salary to be fixed by county commissioners. The election commissioner may appoint assistants and their annual salary fixed by election commissioner. Additional staff may be hired and salaried. It seems, here's the question, it seems that the county commissioners have control over the election commissioner. What is your position on this newly appointed legislation?
So probably appropriate I got that first, since I was one of the vocal advocates against this piece of legislation. Everything that you listed there is basically law. The one thing that changed is the election commissioner used to, or until today when the governor signed this law, the election commissioner would submit a budget and the county had to take the budget that the election commissioner submitted. And this was this only happens in the 4 largest counties because there is an appointed election commissioner. The danger here is that the only place to cut the budgets is in the election process. You can cut the number of poll places, the number of poll workers, the notices that go out, but everything else that's done in the office has to be done by law. And so there's really no cutting of the office staff or the people counting the votes or any of the procedures that go on in the office. The reason this came about was because some of the counties wanted the election offices not to do certain things. In Sedgwick County, they cut the number of polling places dramatically. In Johnson County is the one case where there's probably a good reason for this, and we had an election commissioner who was spending some money that was not approved of properly, and they wanted to make sure that that was taken care of. But that was already being taken care of from the Secretary of State's office and within the office itself to make sure that that would not happen again in the future. So I don't like the idea of the same people who are counting the votes, which the county commissioners are the ones who are the canvassers of the election. They designate which ballots on the provisional ballots get counted and which don't, and they certify the total count of the ballots in each county. They're now also in charge of the election process. The only thing they aren't in charge of yet is the election commissioner themselves. And I would hope that that never becomes the case, because then you would have total control under one group of elected officials over the total election process.
Mr. Swab, that would be your turn.
I actually supported the bill. Here's the reason why. I'm a little bit more conservative. I don't think a person should be able to spend as much money as they want. The county commissioners have to pay for it. And this only affects 4 counties. So Johnson County, prior to the law being signed, Johnson County's election commissioner can spend as much money as they want, but yours can't. Because your county is not just yours is a county clerk, not just an election clerk. So her election process is restricted by your county commissioners. Johnson County's not. We're campaigning on 105 counties operating at the same level, but now we suddenly have 4 counties, soon to be 5 when Douglas population hits it, that they now get to spend as much money as the rest of the counties do. The other thing is we have a property tax levy that's trying to keep your property taxes down. And if I have an election commissioner that can spend as much money as he wants, I lose the property tax. So what I'm thinking is what the election in Johnson County should be just as valuable as the election in Lyon County. But you're subject to your county commission, but that one's not. And I don't think that's right. I think they should be submitted to their county commission, and they should have a good relationship with their county commission. And there was only 2 of the 4 county commissioners that had an issue with this law. If I want to protect the property tax levy and keep your property tax down, then I can't have a guy that can write a blank check and make you guys pay for it. We don't need Cadillac voter machines. We just need something to give us an election that we can trust in. But I don't think the election in Johnson County should cost more per voter than the election in Lyon County. The polling places that were shut down in Sedgwick County was because the rural population had moved out. They didn't need as many polling places in the rural area. And that's a county commission issue, not a state issue. So unless you want your state coming in telling the county commissioners what to do and bring your government further away from the people, then we're in a law that allows county commissioners to regulate their budgets so that they can spend less. If you want the efficiency, if you want less fat, then you need to allow county commissioners to regulate their budget, whether it's the clerk or the election clerk. I don't think that's asking too much. And two of the appointed election clerks were like, yeah, I submitted my budget to the county and I try to live within my budget. And good budget monitoring and good conservative folks will do that. They say, here's my budget, I'm going to live within my means, I'm not going to sign a blank check. So that's why I supported the bill, just to make sure that the county commissioners can hold an election commissioner accountable from spending on your all's tax dollars.
I too supported the bill. I believe as long as we can have as much local control as possible, the better. Really, this kind of spurred from a disagreement between election commissioner in Shawnee County, who, overspent on an election and then was punished, actually had his pay docked because of it. The county commission should have control over that budget. But really, the Secretary of State, because we appoint these 4 large election commissioners, we need to do a better job of justifying why an election costs what it does. No election is the same. It's very different in Lyon County than it is in Johnson County. All right, and with Shawnee County, there was a disagreement about how much something would cost. Commissioner Howe put forth a budget. They said, hey, that's too much money. So I do believe that the county commission has that right, and I support the bill. But we need to do a better job to educate county commissioners on, hey, this is why it costs so much to do these elections. And it's money well spent. This is our democracy. I don't see any issue with that. The instance they talked about in Johnson County was with an election commissioner who was spending ungodly amounts of money on ridiculous things. In Johnson County, they have a lot more money than most counties, and a lot of them didn't bat an eye. But when I looked through some of the things that election commissioner was spending, I was appalled. Books and iPads, and just things that we don't just buy on a public dime. All right, so it's important for us, I think, at our level, at the county level, to be able to check that and make sure that people are being good stewards of our money.
Digging down to someone, I don't know who it is, says, there's a question about, say a voter dies. How long does it take to, I'm gonna have to get glasses. How long does it take to scrub, as it says, the voter list after a death is reported in the state? And how long should it take? We'll go with you, Mr. Reed, again.
Well, the easy thing is that if it happens in the state and we have a record, a state verified record, that it happens practically, within a couple of days. The problem is when somebody dies out of state, they moved out of state and died, they're still on our voter rolls because we don't get that notification. But there is constant scrubbing that goes on the voter records, looking at the Social Security death records and other databases, to change of address databases. And what happens when we can't verify for sure whether the voter is no longer at that address or not, we send out cards to them, and if the card gets returned undeliverable, then they go out, they go on the inactive list, and after 2 full election cycles, they are automatically removed. So, and if they vote any time in those 4 years, then they're automatically restored to being an active voter. So sometimes it can take up to 4 years, but if we have the actual record, it happens within a few days.
Actually, pretty much quoted the rules and regs in the legislation for it. And I'm okay with up to 4 years, because here's the reason why. How would you like it if you went to the polls and went to vote and said you're dead? That's a little irritating, it'd be a bad day. But that being said, you want to make sure you can verify through vital statistics, you get a death certificate, they're dead. I do think there needs to be more conjunction, especially with the surrounding states, with Missouri, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Colorado's vital statistics, and other retirement places like Florida and Arizona to say, hey, we got this person on a roll. We need to verify for you that they haven't voted in 4 years. Do you have a vital statistic of a person that verify this person's death, before you can take them off? The good news is we got voter ID, and I have yet to find a dead person who showed up their ID at the poll. So you have these checks and balances in place now with some of the SAFE Act to prevent what you have in what's been known in Illinois as the dead person voting. It just doesn't happen in Kansas because normally by the time they get a chance to vote or someone realizes they're dead and they're no longer, they can have access to vote in their stead, the ID is outdated, or they don't have a valid ID to vote with. So there's other checks and balances. So up to 4 years is reasonable, as long as I don't want to take the live people off the voting rolls because someone called me and said they died. We want to make sure we get the verification right. So it's like you said, in-state, not a problem. It's the out-of-state, you want to make sure you get it right because by gosh, if a live person shows up and that clerk was told they were dead and they can't vote or they got to vote provisionally, again, you're going back to an election. And now suddenly you're questioning whether or not you can trust the result because you're telling people it's worse to tell people that they're dead when they're alive than it is to tell a person that's alive that they're voting in somebody's dead space. So you want to make sure you verify it appropriately. And if it takes up to 4 years, I would rather do that so you get an election that you trust with the voters that are actually showing up with an ID.
2010, I believe it was 2010, when Secretary Kobach was first running for Secretary of State, he had a list as an example of all these people that had voted, and they were dead people. They all voted. And then in Wichita, they found one of these dead people mowing their lawn. There's really not a whole lot to add to what my associates up here said. We have a good system in place. We check very often with the Office of Vital Statistics. We should do it probably daily, every other day, but I'll be honest, no list is perfect. That's why we have cross-check. That's why we do photo ID, proof of citizenship. What I'm worried most about is states like Colorado who have all mail-in ballots, because it's very hard for a dead guy to vote in person, but it's pretty easy for a dead guy to vote by mail. So, if we can work with our Secretary of States and make sure, especially the surrounding states, like Scott said, that would help us a lot. But we do a pretty good job in keeping up the voter rolls.
Hey, we're getting along pretty good. Is that clock accurate over there? All right. Next question. Mr. Swab, I think you can start this one.
All right.
You would?
Maybe.
All right, that's an easy one. Is there any new legislation that you would propose as Secretary of State?
Nope. And it's the message we started in August. It's the same thing we've been saying the whole time. All of us have jobs where they're constantly changing your policy and procedure. How come you're not getting it right? Well, what we did last week isn't what you're telling me to do this week. We told you to do last year, now I'm having to learn a new process this year. Our message is just, let's just keep it. We've got a lot of policy. We have 105 election commissioners that are trying to process and execute. And they need training on the ELDA system that they're not necessarily getting. Like I said, they haven't got the election standards. Our goal is to make sure that in the legislative intent, they interpret it all the same and execute it on a high level. So that when you get an election result, you trust it. You get a trusted result. So no, we're not going to be before committee pushing a bunch of new policy. We've had a ton of policy. What's the point of having new policy if people cannot execute it on the legislative intent? And I was the only one running this race, I was actually there when it all passed, I know the legislature. I know why the Democrats voted. I know why Tony Hensley voted for voter ID. And I know why his county should be supporting it, and I know the level at which they should be interpreting it and executing